Because business has slowed down, as you mentioned,
in China.
But we're seeing as a result, the ports here in the U.S., the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
Yeah, no, that means we lose less money. You know, when I see that means we lose less money.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
I wonder how MAGA will spin this. I mean, there's nothing quite like emptying shelves in ports just to own the libs, right?
In just over 100 days, the president has already spiked the cost of groceries. Thanks to his tariffs, we have empty ports. And we're weeks away from those empty ports turning into empty shelves and even higher prices.
We're starting to see the disastrous effects of Trump's Liberation Day. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are reporting 44% decrease in docked vessels. The Port Authority in Seattle also saying that container vessels are becoming a lot less common. Of course, these are Western ports that are being most affected because they normally have ships coming from China. And as we know, we're in this stalemate with China. But what does our president have to say, the one who led us into this mess, who keeps on promising that he plans on getting us out of it? Well, this is his economic philosophy on it. Take a listen.
That means we lose less money. You know, when I see that means we lose less money. Look, China was making over $1 trillion, 1.1 trillion, in my opinion. You know, different numbers from 500 billion to $1 trillion or $1 trillion. I think it was 1.1 trillion. And frankly, if we didn't do business, we would have been better off. Okay, you understand that. So when you say it slowed down, that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Over my shoulder here, I'm looking out at the Port of Seattle right now, and we currently have no container ships at berth. And that happens every once in a while in normal times, but it is pretty rare. And so to see it tonight is, I think, a stark reminder that the impacts of the tariffs have real implications. It means that we don't have longshore workers on the dock right now unloading merchandise. We don't have trains taking that merchandise to inland ports and all the way across the country to places like Des Moines, Iowa, and Chicago, Illinois. And that's hundreds of jobs right here in our region and across the country.
You have none at your port right now?
We currently do not have any container ships at port right now. That's correct.
And that's because just nothing is being shipped over? I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Well, it is. It's pretty unusual.
So Trump's whole answer to empty shelves and empty ports is we will lose less money. Let's just give a little primer on economics. I was a child of an immigrant who became an economist who worked his whole life in the government. So I learned about supply and demand at a very young age, and I'm sure many of you know the basics of supply and demand as well. But just for those in the back in the MAGA crowd who maybe believe what he's saying, let's pare it down to this very simple economic philosophy. The more supply there is compared to the demand, which means the more items that come into this country compared to the more we want to buy, it means that the price of goods go down. The less supply that comes into this country, and with the demand staying the same, yes, you guessed it, the price goes up, which means we as Americans will spend more money for that same item. That's the very basics of supply and demand. So when he says we will lose less money, I don't know in any way I can actually even make that sound rational or be rational. The fact of the matter is, Americans will spend more money on the same exact item, and that's if that item even exists, because for whole companies and whole products, we may not see any product at all. And that's the real economic consequence of his very chaotic and very destructive terror. And the fact of the matter is, Trump may try to lie all he wants about grocery prices going down, oil prices going down, or this idea that maybe we will have products under our shelves. He may lie about why that happens, but it's very hard to lie about it actually happening when real people go to the grocery stores and they see either no product or their product becoming more expensive. But just because it's going to be hard to convince people to not believe what they see doesn't mean Trump isn't going to try this. Was his other really nonsensical explanation for, again, justifying his tariffs. Take a listen.
Well, I think they're saying that just to try and negotiate deals with me. They're not. Look, tariffs are the most misunderstood thing maybe in any form of business, anywhere in business. Oftentimes the country picks them up. Oftentimes the company picks it up. The people don't pick it up, okay? The people don't pick it up.
Well, the people are going to be picking it up, and Trump's not going to be able to lie his way out of it. He could lie about the why, but we are all going to see prices go up in real time, and he can't lie his way out of that. It's actually quite funny if he thinks that American companies would absorb those tariffs, despite the fact that those same companies have been unwilling to pay taxes or pay American workers a living wage because they're all about their bottom line. But suddenly they'll absorb these tariffs and allow their profits to crater and their shareholders to lose money. Now, that is certainly not going to happen. Not now, not ever.
Countries have done it's like jet fuel. It'd be great, but he doesn't want to do it. I think he doesn't want to do it. Probably he's not in love with me. I think that's right. It's sort of a crazy reason, but that's the way life is. Anybody in his position.
Perhaps one of the more disturbing comments Trump made in his press conference, which went a little bit under the radar, was he blamed Jerome Powell for not loving him enough. That evidently Jerome Powell, doing his job and trying to hold our economy steady during this very chaotic time, was him not loving Trump enough. This was an actual comment about a Federal Reserve chair from a president, that he wasn't even trying to criticize Powell's IQ, surprisingly, but this was about not having enough affection for him, like as if what Powell does is really more about his feelings about this one man, Trump, than the millions of Americans who depend on a stable economic policy. That kind of distorted reality that Trump lives in is such a perfect example of why he is so dangerous as the leader of our country, because his view is actually a very small world. It's all about him. Is it good for him? Does the person like him? He can't even fathom the fact that Jerome Powell may have just a different opinion. Of course, his opinion is also based on experience, but he can't even fathom that his decisions, that Jerome Powell's decisions, have actually nothing to do with Trump. That narcissism is just always on display with Trump, but it's still not something we should ever normalize.
Describe for us, let's take a beat, really frame it for us, how much volume has just dropped off in the last few weeks?
Yeah, about a third of the import volume, which means give or take about 50,000 20-foot equivalent units gone off the arrivals coming in next week.
So from next week is when you expect to see this really hit?
That's correct. And that matches up. The announcement's back on April 2nd. Then on April 8th, a little bit of a change on everybody, ex-China, Mexico, Canada. And those arrivals are coming at us this weekend.
We'll, of course, dedicate time to your port, but I'm just wondering how you're anticipating this rolls and ripples through the economy from here, how it hits trucking, when this turns up on the shelf. What's the distance, the time from when you see a drop-off in volume and when we, as consumers, see the shortages?
Right. So CEOs are telling me, hit the pause button, right? I'm not going to import anymore at these kind of prices. Let's wait and see. I don't know if it's going to be 2 hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks till I get some clarity. Then hiring. Off the table for right now. Capital investment, pause. And the retailers are telling me that realistically, with even the 10%, I'm going to have to pass it on to the consumers.
So how much is this really coming from all over? It's not just about China. This is about really global trade coming to a standstill until there is a much greater degree of certainty and a much lower tariff rate than even the baseline that's been put out there.
Yeah, when I was last with you all, Lisa, I said global trade's going to slow, economies will follow, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Back in November, so many of us were wringing our hands about 4% inflation. We've just added 10 percentage points to imports coming out of Southeast Asia for our port, and these unbelievable numbers out of